Gang is Hexy. All right, so you were looking at Bloody Omaha, just one map. This game has 4 maps to it if you're playing the whole thing. But this is the tactical combat system, or is it tactical combat series? Yeah, tactical combat series from Multiman. All right, this was game number 3, I believe, in the generations of this game, which there's quite a few out there. Sorry, you're not able to see it all, but Bloody the Bloody Beach, Omaha, D-Day, June 6th to the 8th. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, a lot of the MMP games, they break them down. They give you scenarios where you can learn as you go. So I decided, okay, so let's take the first scenario they have, which is an armored fight. So it's a bunch of Shermans against some Tiger 2s and some Yog Panthers, I think. Martyr 3s, okay? And the objective is for the Yanks to get, I think it's 9 or 5 units off the map edge over here. Okay, it's straight armor, so these are referred to as point targets or point firers, and so the combat's pretty simple. Not using any kind of area fire. So skipping all the command rules and stuff like that. This is literally simply going to be tanks fighting tanks, and movement and fire pretty much is what's involved here. So how it works is you get action phases. Each side gets an action phase, and you roll a dice for the initiative. Whoever gets the initiative, they get to do their actions first. Now, as a vehicle unit, which you can see a Tiger 2 right here, they conduct what's called impulses, and they can conduct up to 3 impulses during an action phase. They don't have to do them back to back to back. They can. But they can do 3. So that this Tiger 2 could sit here, and if he has a target, he could conduct 3 fire phases. Okay? Now, every time a unit moves or it fires and there's an enemy has line of sight to it, i.e., if this Tiger were to shoot at this stack right here, once he's fired, he's given his position up, then one of these 2 stacks could opportunity fire or overwatch fire back at him. And it does not cost them an impulse because they're the non-phasing player. All right. So what happens is this tank fires, boom. He fires against every Sherman in that stack right there, well, so to speak, because you're going to use the factors that are there. And it's not based off their fire strength. It's based off the number of steps. So in the early version of the game, this Tiger 2 is a 1-step unit. All right. So you have a combat chart that has steps on it. Okay. Right here. And you'll start at wherever the 1 step is. But then you have all these modifiers for terrain. And then the fire point differential, which is this chart over here, point fire differential. So in this chart over here, you take the firing unit, which is for that Tiger's an 8. And then you take the best for the defender defense value, which in this case, all these Shermans are 3s. And that's a 5-point differential. Well, for the attacker, you can't go more than +3. So now you're getting 3 column shifts for that. So now your 1 is going to go 1, 2, 3. Now you're up here. All right. Then you're going to take in the fact for terrain. You're going to take in account for their range, which this number here in the bracket in reds for this King Tiger, I'll show you another one right here. His nominal range is an 8. So he can shoot up to 16 at long range, and anything, and 50% of his nominal range rounded up is close. So you're going to get a +3 modifier for nominal range. You're going to get a +5 column shift for close range. So as it's taking me 2 nights to learn this, I started using the old rules first because I didn't think I could do this, but then I pulled the new rules out and realized I could do this. And the new system is much better because you roll the dice, 2 6-sided dice, one becomes a 10s and one becomes 1 through 6, like a lot of the MMP games are. And you might get on the chart, depending on what you roll, you'll get step losses, morale check, if a unit has morale, which in this version of the game here, the defense factor, if it's red, it's their morale rating. All right, so if these Shermans all shoot at that Tiger and they cause a 1-step loss, all right, well, there's a stack in here. Obviously, you're probably going to take that martyr first, okay? So if this stack of Shermans is overwatch firing at this stack, the Germans get to use the best defense value they got, which is of the Tiger II. So as I was doing this, I was thinking, oh my God, man, using steps and everything, these guys got 5 or 6 in a stack. They're going to kill this Tiger like it was nothing. Well, I got news for you. It didn't happen. And matter of fact, the one Tiger II they did kill, they had to roll, I think they rolled like a 60-something on it. And they had to roll like a 60 or better, I think, to get a one-step loss, and they got lucky and got one. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of balanced. The Tiger does provide, because of its armor, against those Shermans, which these Shermans are sitting with, these look like 75 millimeters. So they're having a hard time punching a hole. Plus, the Tiger's sitting back behind a hedgerow. This Tiger's sitting up, I think, on a little bit higher ground, which I think just line of sight. It doesn't really have anything, I don't think, for slope. At least I haven't seen it yet. But so there seems to be a pretty good balance. So I played one action phase. I played the Germans' action phase. They took out 3 Shermans, okay? They did, for opportunity fire, because of the massive firepower, they lost a Martyr and a Tiger. They had hits that would have caused morale checks, but like I say, these armor units don't have a morale listed on them. Could just because the system's older, because I noticed in the new counters there is a morale rating on these things, and that leads to things like paralyzed and suppression. So I'm not having to worry about morale checks on fire in this one because these guys don't have any morale on them. So when I get a no effect or a morale check, I just use the morale check as a no effect on the firing, which could be wrong, I don't know, but like I say, they don't have any morale on them. Now these armor units also have a movement side. All right, right there. So you can see their movement factor is like a 12. So a unit, when they start their action phase, this tank unit, he could take a movement action, move half his movement allowance. That would be 1 impulse. Then on his next impulse, he could flip to his firing side, which costs 1 impulse. And then for a third impulse, he could fire. All right. Units can opportunity or overwatch fire as many times as they're triggered, but only one stack, one hex can opportunity fire when it's triggered. So if this guy fires at him, one of these 2 stacks can opportunity fire back if he's the phasing player. All right. And you can only do it once per trigger. That's pretty cool. So if you play this, if you happen to have Omaha, I haven't looked at the other games yet to see what kind of training scenarios they got, but if they got one, start with the armored fight one, because it's you have area targets and area fires. You have point targets and point fires. This one is strictly points, so it's pretty simple. Find your steps, determine your shift, your column modifiers, and roll your dice. And it's pretty simple. Remove the counter if he's step lost, because each one of these, like I say, is only 1 step. So pretty simple. Just took me 2 nights to figure out what it was I was doing, because I was messing with the old rules. But I can see why the big board likes this system. So me just learning just this basic functionality of the game to get me started. So phase 1 of this for me is pretty good. Once the acting player's done all his phases, it switches over to the other player. He does his phase, and then you go to a cleanup phase, and then you start the next turn. All right? And don't let the sequence of play fool you in this. There's a lot to it, but if you're just learning the game, you won't be using all that. This game is also designed to, you don't have to play with the command rules, which if you're playing solo, I haven't read them deep enough yet, because, you draw out your operations orders pretty much, and you mark up your maps just like we used to do back in the when I was a scout in the military. Your phase lines, your objectives, what people are going to be doing, timetables, whatever. Might be a little hard to do solo in this. Might be a little not like the Civil War Brigade series, which is kind of fun to do that one. But yeah, so far, like I say, I've learned through just the basics of this using an armored fight, and I'm enjoying it. So if you got TCS out there and you haven't given it a roll yet, get it out, give it a look-see, and let's see what you think about it. All right, we'll talk to y'all soon.